Hi everyone, this video is going to review the poetry collection analysis essay assignment as well as the annotated bibliography and outline assignments leading up to the essay. So right now on the screen you see the poetry collection guidelines and resources, which are linked over here on the left sidebar of the Blackboard course site. So let's go ahead and start by taking a look at the essay assignment guidelines. Note that this is the longest essay of the semester at 2,000 words. And in addition to one of the 4 poetry collections that you're choosing to analyze, you need at least 3 additional outside sources. So again, those poetry collections are An American Sunrise by Joy Harjo, our current poet laureate, Be Recorder by Carmen Jimenez Smith, Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky, and The Tradition by Jericho Brown. And highlighted here is the main thrust of this assignment, which is to analyze the theme and tone of one of those 4 collections of poetry. And you're going to do that by choosing 4 poems from your chosen collection and focusing your analysis on those 4 poems. And you're going to be providing both a formalist analysis and a new historical analysis for each of those 4 poems. So you've done those types of analyses before. The difference this time is that you're analyzing 4 poems by the same author from the same collection of poetry, and the purpose of that analysis is to say, here's how these 4 poems overall reflect the theme and the tone of this entire collection of poetry. So these bullet points are just review on what a formalist analysis is, focusing on identifying the various poetic devices within the 4 poems that you're choosing to analyze, and again, explaining the effects that those poetic devices have, and then the new historical approach, explaining how the poem is related to the time period in which it was written. So the thesis for this essay should identify the overall theme and tone of the entire collection and say something about how that theme and tone is achieved. So, as always, be sure that you're including in-text citations throughout your essay, both when you're quoting the poems that you're analyzing and when you are quoting or paraphrasing or summarizing in your own words information from your other 3 sources. One of the source requirements for this essay is that at least one of your sources must come from the Tri-C Library English Literature resources, and we will take a look at those resources in a minute when we look at the annotated bibliography assignment. And then on the second page, you'll see the grading rubric, which is similar to the rubrics that you've had for your previous 2 essays. So if we go back to the poetry collection guidelines and resources, the next thing you will see is the annotated bibliography assignment. And if we look at the course calendar, that annotated bibliography assignment is due on Monday of next week, July 20th. I just made a change to the course calendar and updated it on Blackboard that I'm going to give you until the end of the day on Monday, until 11:59 p.m. to complete both the annotated bibliography and the outline, which we will also discuss here in a minute. So this is the annotated bibliography assignment, and one of the differences you'll see in the way you're going to submit this assignment compared to what we've mostly been doing this semester is if you go to the course content here on Blackboard and we look next week under week 9 for Monday, you're just going to submit that annotated bibliography as an attachment to this assignment. So you're not going to post it to a discussion forums. You'll submit it the way you would submit like the final draft of an essay previously in the semester. So the annotated bibliography, if you have not done one of these before, is really just focusing on the research. So the bibliography consists of, first of all, your thesis statement at the top, and after that, it includes the 3 sources, and that's a minimum, that you're planning on using in your essay. So for the annotated bibliography, I only need to see 3 sources. If you decide to use more than 3 sources in your essay, that's fine, but the bibliography assignment can be just 3 sources. So these should not be the poetry collection, right? These are the 3 sources that you're required to find in addition to the poetry collection. So what you'll do is you'll create a works cited entry for each of those 3 sources, and then below each works cited entry, you will do a 100 to 200 word summary of that source. So describe the source by identifying its main points in your own words, and also explain how that source will be used in your essay or how it will help you support your thesis. And that's why you begin the annotated bibliography with your thesis statement, to remind you that all of those sources that you're including in your essay should be helping to support your thesis in some way. And again, there is this requirement that at least one of your sources come from the Tri-C Library English Literature Resources. So if we go back to Blackboard, you will see a link on the left sidebar to those resources. This is the page that that link will take you to. I suggest that you focus on this left-hand column of literature articles. There's a literature reference center. The MLA International Bibliography is another resource that has a lot of articles written about various works of literature. If we look at the Literature Reference Center, the first one, here's an example of results you might get. When you click on one of those resources, the first thing you'll have to do is enter your Tri-C username and password in order to get access to it. And then it will take you to a search page where you can enter your search terms. As an example, I'm using a poet from a previous section of this course, Tracy K. Smith, former poet laureate of the United States, and her poetry collection, Wade in the Water. This is also what the sample student essay that we're going to look at was about as well. So you can see that from those search results, I've got a list of 181 results. So some of these are going to be poems themselves. The very first entry is the title poem of the collection where it was originally published in the New Yorker magazine, so that's not going to really help you as an additional source. One thing that you can do to help you narrow down your search results is if you go over here to the left sidebar, you can narrow it down by different types of sources if you wanted to focus on reviews of that poet or that poetry collection, or on literary criticism of that poet or of that poetry collection. You can narrow down your results that way, and that can be helpful. You don't have to Google or, do your search terms exactly the way I have. If you're choosing to write about Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky, you could start by just searching Ilya Kaminsky's name, and information that's not directly about that poetry collection could still be relevant if it's biographical information about that author, but adding the name of the poetry collection that you're analyzing, again, is just another way to help you narrow down those search results. So I'm asking for one of your 3 sources to come from these literature resources because these results have already been filtered for you by a librarian as opposed to just, your standard Google search results. And I believe I mentioned that for the second essay in the course, for the literary criticism essay, some of the sources that some students chose to use were just not quite up to par as college-level sources. So things like Shmoop and Lit Charts, those are really just, someone else's amateur analysis of a poem, and you really shouldn't be relying on that. I would like the analysis of the poems to be something that's primarily coming from your own thoughts. And if you are going to bring in some outside analysis to corroborate that, you want to make sure it's from a source with greater authority than you have, such as someone who is an academic studying those poems. So that's the annotated bibliography, which is due on Monday of next week. And then the other thing that's due on Monday is an outline for the essay. And I haven't asked you to do an outline before, but since this is a longer essay, I am asking you to do one this time. So you'll see the instructions here are asking you to write a formal outline that should have at least 7 Roman numerals. The idea is that each Roman numeral in your outline represents one paragraph in your essay. And since this is going to be approximately a 5 or 6 page essay at 2,000 words, you should plan on having at least 7 paragraphs in that essay. So each Roman numeral should then be further divided into letter A and letter B. So the idea is, it says that you should write your outline in complete sentences. So the sentence that you would write next to each Roman numeral, that would be like the topic sentence for that paragraph. And then the information that you would include for letter A and letter B would be more detail about what you're going to include in that paragraph. So for example, the assignment says that you need to analyze 4 poems from your collection. So you should have at least 1 paragraph for each of those 4 poems, right? So maybe the topic sentence for the Roman numeral about one of those poems is your overall, takeaway of what that poem's about, and then letter A is, what are you going to focus on in your formalist analysis of that poem, and letter B is what are you going to focus on for your new historical analysis of that poem, for example. So I do have some guidelines of what a formal outline looks like. Under the Poetry Collection Guidelines and Resources, you will see this folder labeled Outlining Resources, and there's a link here on using outlines, which just shows you the format of what a formal outline looks like. You, again, only have to go down to, as far as dividing each Roman numeral into a letter A and a letter B. If you wanted to get more detailed, this shows you what that additional detail would look like. It also gives you a sample outline that uses complete sentences, again, just to give you sort of an idea of what that would look like. This is not at all on the type of topic I'm asking you to write about. But for example, here's Roman numeral 3. It has a topic sentence for that paragraph written next to that Roman numeral, and then letters A and B show the details that are going to be used to support the topic of that paragraph. So it gives you the general idea. If we go back to the Poetry Collection Guidelines and Resources, I have also included a sample student essay from a previous semester of this course, and that essay is, as I said earlier, not on one of the essays that you're writing about. This is on the collection Wade in the Water by Tracy K. Smith. And you can look at this as an example of how to organize your essay. So what I've done in this example is I've highlighted here the 4 poems from this collection that this essay is discussing, and then you can see the corresponding colors as we go through the essay where it analyzes each of those 4 poems. So when you're organizing your essay, I do suggest that you organize it in this way where you pick your 4 poems from the collection that you want to analyze, and you analyze, each of those 4 poems in sequence. So for poem 1, do both the formalist and the new historical analysis together, and then move on to the second poem. And you can see that there's also some, introductory and conclusion material in this essay as well. So you have that example to look at. If we go back to the course content, again, the annotated bibliography and the outline are both due on Monday of next week, so you'll just post those assignments as attachments to those assignments under Monday's date in the course content, and there is no discussion forum for Monday of next week. And then the rough draft and peer review of the essay are due on Wednesday of next week, and there is a discussion forum for that. So I just definitely encourage you that if you want me to take a look at what you're doing for this essay, that you email me and let me know, and I will be happy to do that. And another reminder, the discussion forum from Monday of this week, which was to do a biography of a poet and an explication of one of their poems, that was meant to be from the collection that you're going to write about for this essay. There was some confusion about that.